Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for November 19th, 2024. I'm Jim Castleman, the mayor. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. Normally at this time we scan the audience for any students we may have who are visiting us today, and I can see that that's not necessarily the case this evening, but I only say that so that if there are any younger individuals in our community that are watching this right now, realize that when you do come down to a meeting at the City Council chambers, we will recognize you. You can go ahead and introduce yourself and say why you're here. If we can help you in any way, we gladly will do that after the meeting. And we do that because, again, you are the future of this community, and we hope that we set good examples for you to want to follow in our footsteps. So with that, I'd like to move to item number 1 on the agenda, which, oh, by the way, I always miss this. Will I have the clerk please call roll?
Councilmember Gillum. Present. Councilmember Whitting.
Present.
Councilmember Dorr.
Excused.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor King.
Present.
Mayor Castava.
Present. Okay, with that, we'll now move to item number 1 on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Let's move on to number 2, consideration of minutes. And that's for item number 2A, approval of the October 22nd, 2024 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay, now let's move on to our favorite time, which is citizen comments. And at this time, I'd like to have our clerk read the outline instructions for citizen comments. Please proceed.
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, excellent. So everyone is given 3 minutes, and I know my intent is not to be rude at all, but I will have to cut everyone off at 3 minutes so that I ensure that everyone is treated exactly the same as they come in before the council. With that, our first person, John Chontafowski, please come forward. While he's doing that, if you haven't filled one of these out, and I think most people have, please feel free to do so. It puts you in the queue to speak, but keep in mind that even when I'm through everyone here who has filled out one of these forms, I still allow other people to come forward. You're just not necessarily in the queue as people who have put the form forward are. So, John, please proceed.
John Chontafowski, 1519 7th Street Southwest, Puyallup, District 2. Mayor, members of council, staff, fellow citizens, I was honored tonight to be able to enter the chamber through the Kendall Hall lobby. My reasoning tonight is I'll start out by reflecting on 2 proclamations from previously this year. In June 4th, proclamation regarding the LGBTQIA plus Pride Month. One paragraph reads, whereas The promise of America is that all people shall be able to live with dignity and have equal rights under the law. Proclamation set forth just last week at the council meeting, Golden Rule Month. Begins, whereas the city of Puyallup is a community rooted in compassion, respect, and unity, where residents are committed to supporting one another and fostering a culture of kindness and understanding. Tonight, I would ask the council to please consider allowing New Hope Resource Center to utilize a piece of property, it's my understanding, is owned by the city for the purpose of, perhaps on a weekly basis or as deemed appropriate, to allow a vehicle self-contained trailer with shower and laundry services contained within the vehicle to allow the homeless the ability to take showers and do laundry. For the record, I have no connection with New Hope.
30 seconds.
As far as member, all I do is stop by on occasion. I see what type of goods they could use, and I try to provide what I can. I'm very passionate about this, and I wish this be seriously considered. Thank you.
Thank you, John. The next is Vicki Burke, and the address looks familiar. She's my neighbor. Please come forward.
We don't know if that's a bonus or not yet, do we? Hi, I'm Vicki Burke. I live at 407 8th Avenue Northeast in Puyallup. I'm 25th LD. I don't know if that's what you were looking for. I've watched and I've spoken here before and how we have all handled situations, which your newest proposed actions has me here today. It is your job as city council members to facilitate and provide access to and affordable and show accountability for your own community. I'm tired of the band-aids that politicians try to place over things that need big resolutions, like the rocks at the New Hope. That was not a positive solution. It was cruel to take shade from those who do not have shelter. As a mom who has friends with young adults that are caught up in the self-medicating for whatever reason, I've shared in those tears as they've walked the cold streets. It's been simple as a kind person reaching out a hand to help. And what can I do to help you? That's what I'm asking of you. With that said, what are you doing to help? We need clinics. We need a place for them to be able to seek help. 5 minutes before I left my house tonight, I called one of my friends who's been struggling with some sort of addiction for her entire life. I've asked her on how many occasions were you ready to seek help? And you called and there was none available. She said, well, darn near every time, every place was full, and twice she had to go out of state at great cost. So I think that there's been a proposition that there's for the methadone clinics to be close proximity to the medical facility. Well, we all know that properties doesn't have a lot available out there. I think we need to not put a permanent moratorium on future clinics. I think it's going to really be harmful to the health of our community. I think it sets you guys up for a liability situation, because if I'm the mom of that child that dies because they couldn't get help in Puyallup, I'm coming after you. I'm going to come after you hard. So I'm here today as a voice for people who don't have the strength for themselves. I'm here for my friends. I'm here for my friends' kids that I've had to pull off the streets. And it took us 3 days to get my friend's drug addicted child off the streets. We found him on 38th Street in Tacoma. A friend of mine picked him up, took him to his house. 3 days later, we took him to the Seattle Mission. Why are we not having accountability in our own area for our own people? That is something we should all be ashamed of. These kids are self-medicating. A lot of them are former military.
Mr. Mayor, speakers reached 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. John Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Hopkins, District 1. Resolution number 5, Harris Building. I'm going to ask you, have you seen any of these processes go through to their conclusion during your time? The answer is probably no, because I don't think any have happened for about 20 years. And that's a real shame, because we need buildings restored. So what's going on? You know, why is that the case? Well, I think part of it is people don't realize what can be done, and that's a shame. They also get concerned that once they do a listing, they won't be able to use their properties, you know, for the purposes that they think they should. Well, that's just not true. There's a lot of flexibility within things. Then there's the issue that if you want a listing, you've got to do some research. That takes some work, and the people who used to do it have passed on, unfortunately. So now you've got to do it yourself, and a lot of people are probably intimidated by that. Having done that part, then you get to do the restoration, which can cost a little bit more, but I really think it's well worth it, because you end up with a building with a lot of character, so it's worth more, it's more rentable, et cetera, et cetera. So up to that point, I think it's really good. Now, there's the next little obstacle is sometimes it can cause delays. In my case, it cost 2 or 3 months, and I'm not blaming staff for that, but it's a real issue. Actually, I will say staff did a really good job of working on the whole thing. So even though there haven't been a lot of them lately, I still commend them. But at the end of the day, you know, there's the reward, and that's the reduction in the property tax. When you factor all that in, even though it may take you 10 years to get your money back, you know, you end up with a piece of property that you can be proud of, that helps the community, and it actually does work. So if a person is going to do a remodel, you know, I really think, and assuming the property, of course, qualifies, then I thoroughly recommend that they do it that way.
30 seconds.
And I'm going to quit at 30 seconds. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to throw in one more thing. Thanks for listening to me in regard to Inter Avenue. I believe the wheels are in progress as far as that goes, and I thoroughly appreciate it, and so do the businesses along Inter Avenue appreciate it, and the prospective tenant along there certainly will appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you. Finally, Paul Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Castamo. Paul Romich, District 1. Hard to believe it's almost Thanksgiving, so this snuck up on me a bit. The third Sunday in November is World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. We've had 7 lives lost to road violence in Puyallup this year. I find this number unacceptable, so I support the Transportation Benefit District funding conditionally that the council commits to investing to improve safety on our streets, not resurfacing the status quo. Per the United Nations, the organization behind the World Day of Remembrance, their action plan states that it is up to you, as government, to choose between business as usual or acting boldly and decisively using tools and knowledge gained over the past decade. The UN's action plan identifies these tools as multimodal and land use planning, safe road infrastructure, vehicle safety improvements, and safe road use. Only those first 2 things are within your realm of control, so focus on those. What does the UN support for multimodal transportation land use planning? The first item is to implement policies that promote compact urban design. Other items include policies that lower car speeds and prioritize other road users, promoting transit-oriented development, creating connections for non-drivers that reduce total travel time, and constructing a transportation network that safely serves the travel needs of all ages and abilities. These things may sound familiar to you, not just from me, but from the World Health Organization and the AARP. Both support the same stuff in their Age-Friendly Cities campaign. We were awarded a participation prize for having an age-friendly city action plan, not because we are age-friendly. The AARP scores Puyallup as a 50 out of 100. Changes needed. What does safe road infrastructure look like? It follows a safe system approach, anticipating human error, incorporating road design that limits crash forces to within human tolerance, motivating those who design and maintain the roads to share responsibility with road users for safety. A commitment to proactive and continuous improvement of roads so that this entire system is made safe, and adheres to the underlying premise that the transportation system should produce 0 deaths or serious injuries. Ultimately, it stresses that safety should not be compromised for the sake of other factors such as cost or the desire for faster transportation times. The primary action to address this is to review and update local design standards to consider road function and the needs of all road users. This is overdue. Puyallup's transportation network scored a 44 out of 100 by the AARP. And more importantly, lives are too frequently changed for the worse on our streets. Change is needed. I don't mean to ambush you, but since this past Sunday was the World Day of Remembrance, I ask that the Puyallup Transportation Benefit District Board to begin their first ever meeting with 7 seconds of silence in memory of those who have perished this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate those comments. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. This is where we have a number of items listed, and then we make one vote because there is a general agreement amongst council members that we will vote in the affirmative. And it just so happens there was just one item on the consent agenda. And do I have a motion to, or first of all, let me say, would you like to discuss this? Let me put that forward to council members. Okay. With that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Let's move on to number 4, which are ordinances. And the first one we have is item 4A, first reading of an ordinance to amend Title 20 of the Puyallup Municipal Code. And I believe that this is in place of, we'll have Katie Baker come forward and explain that. But I believe there was a moratorium in place, and that this is in fact going to remove that moratorium and in fact place it with a new code modification, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead and explain, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Katie Baker in the Planning Division. So as the mayor mentioned, there is a moratorium in place for any new methadone clinics to be established. This is because about a year ago, staff noticed that there was a kind of a gap in the code, a lack of clarity as to whether, as to how methadone clinics were addressed in the mixed-use zones. So I'll go back to the history a little bit. In 2016, the City Council, after Planning Commission process and input, the City Council established that methadone clinics should only be allowed to be established in the medical zone. So that's the area surrounding and including the Good Samaritan Hospital. As I mentioned, about a year ago, we noticed that there was kind of a lack of clarity in the code regarding our mixed-use zones. Those are formatted in such a way that they do not have a list of permitted uses like most zone chapters do. They simply list prohibited uses and conditionally permitted uses, and methadone clinics were not included. Therefore, the assumption would be that if it's not prohibited, it is permitted. And we knew that was inconsistent with City Council's prior direction. So we came to you at that time, asked for the moratorium so that we could clarify that code gap, take it through the Planning Commission process, and that results in the ordinance that's before you tonight. So it is simply a very simple one-sentence amendment to code to prohibit methadone clinics in the mixed-use zones. This retains council's prior direction to allow it only in the medical zone in the city.
Okay. Any questions? Let me first ask that this did go through the Planning Commission.
Yes, it did.
Okay. Any questions by any members? Councilmember Whitting.
Yeah, are there any methadone clinics in the city at this time?
There are not.
And are there, the medical zone, I'm not exactly familiar with the exact boundaries of the medical zone. I make the assumption that it's down there near Multi-Care, Good Sam, and that enclave there.
Yes, so it essentially, the Good Samaritan Hospital is kind of the northern boundary of the medical zone, and then it comes south up the hill, I think to 19th Avenue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so a lot of that area is pretty well built up with medical buildings.
Yes,
at this
medical
time, right?
office.
So not many places to, if a methadone clinic decided to come in here, there might not be a whole heck of a lot of space available. Would that be accurate?
My understanding and the question that we've had from someone looking to establish a methadone clinic is that they would occupy an existing tenant space. So in theory, they could go into a tenant space in an existing medical office building.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none. Can we have a motion to approve first reading of this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. At this point, we'll open it again for discussion. I think what we had found last time is that we put the moratorium, this lifts the moratorium. There are, going up that hill, the medical zone is an area that we want to expand here in the city, and hence we designated it as such. And at the time we made this original designation, we had testimony from people at Good Sam and other in the medical community that thought this would be a very appropriate zoning requirement. So, again, I think it's appreciated going through the Planning Commission and us getting to this point. So there's been a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I will have, Councilmember Johnson.
Katie, maybe in the handouts there might be a map, but do we have any kind of an outline or a map that we can look at to see exactly kind of where the outline of that is, or is there anything that we can view?
With the medical zone?
Yeah.
I don't have one at hand.
Okay.
I can certainly provide one prior to second reading if that's acceptable.
That would be helpful because it'd be nice to know kind of what kind of space we're talking about, because it for some it might sound like it's a postage stamp. Maybe there's some radius on there that might give optimism for usage in the area. So it'd be really helpful to have that by second reading, kind of a outline of that medical zone. And clarification, I think, is it medical zone near the hospital, but aren't there other areas in Puyallup that are zoned for medical buildings? Would that also be qualified?
That's a great question. So there are other zones that allow medical office as a use, but because those zones don't specifically call out methadone clinics, whereas the medical zone does, we would not allow methadone clinics to occupy those medical offices.
Okay, that's good to know, because I do know that other areas have some classification for medical offices or buildings, but that would be outside of the parameter we're talking about here.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I would support this with a contingency to see the map and to know how much space is around there to make sure that there's adequate, usage for those that wanted to perhaps, lease a building or office or property to make sure there's adequate ability for that. So I would be open to supporting it with contingent upon a view of a map.
Okay.
Thank you. With that, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, let's move on to item number 4B. First reading of an ordinance and resolution determining and fixing the amount of funds to be raised by the regular property taxes for 2025. Finance Director Barbara Lopez, could you please give us a presentation?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Mayor Castema. Good evening, Council. Barbara Lopez, Finance Director. I'm just waiting real briefly for the PowerPoint presentation to come up. I don't see it on the screen.
Thank you.
Thank you. So tonight is first reading on the property tax levy. I just wanted to go through a couple of slides with you just to ground us in the conversation. We've been through several different processes with the budget. Back in October, we had budget study sessions. On October 29th, we did have a public hearing regarding the revenues and the property tax levy. And now tonight, we're at first reading of that property tax levy and the resolution that goes with it. And then next week is scheduled for the second reading. So tonight's action is first reading of the ordinance that actually levies the amount of property tax. Then per statute, we also need to pass a resolution that states the property tax levy or the increase in dollars and a percentage. So there would be those two actions tonight. The preliminary levy for next year is just over $11.2 million. The way that that's calculated is we take the levy for 2024. We add in new construction, administrative refunds, and other things that are identified by Pierce County. We don't do this portion, Pierce County does. We did add the 1% allowable increase. That was us. We added that. And then to help fund the public safety building, use of some of our bank capacity, $730,000, add all of those together, and that comes up to the levy amount of $11.2 million. So on the right-hand side of the screen, it shows our assessed valuation for 2025 is just over $10 billion. When you spread that $11.2 million levy across that, we end up with a levy rate of 107.62. Yes, they go to several decimal places on it. That would be the levy rate on 1,000 per 1,000 of assessed valuation. Based on a recent report from the Pierce County Treasurer, Assessor Treasurer, the median value home right now in Puyallup is $525,000, or yeah, $525,000. And so the estimated cost of this levy on that median value home would be $566,000. It's important to note everybody's assessed valuation is different, and everybody's levy will be based on their specific assessed valuation. And that is the end.
Okay. Now, just so that I understand technically what we're doing here this evening, this will be for the first reading, and you're asking for an ordinance and a resolution, correctly?
Yes. So the ordinance basically states how much we are levying, that $11.2 million. The resolution states how much is the increase from 2024's levy, stated in terms of dollars and a percent. It's required by statute that we do that in a separate resolution, and per our city attorney, a resolution is the way to do that.
Okay, excellent. Just for a point of clarification for members and for the audience who's listening this evening or maybe watching this, that of your property tax that you pay, 11% of that goes towards the city. So what we're talking about here this evening is 11% of your total property tax bill. And again, that's what goes towards the city, pays for our police, our parks, our roads, library services, youth programs, etc. So, yes. But that's what we're discussing. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for bringing that clarity of the 11%. So I'm going to go a little bit on a rant a little bit. I've always felt that local government closest to the people are the better entities to utilize tax monies in a better and more responsible way. Quite frankly, I resent the fact that we only get 11%, and who gets the other 89%? The county or the state? Who gets that?
There's a vast majority of it, over 60%, that goes for schools, and that's the state's part of schools funding and the school district.
Okay.
So, wow. And then Sound Transit gets some, the county gets some.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I hope there's in the future some redistribution of how tax monies that people pay in a local community stay in the community. I think if you live in a community, your tax dollars should go towards that community, and your elected officials that you elect in that community should be able to be accountable how those are spent, and if they don't, then they can, I think, more directly hold them accountable and connect to that. But that's a tangent. Only to say that most of you that know me on the council know that I mostly have always voted against almost every single tax increase that's come before us, even the COLA ones where, the cost of living, I've resented it. But in this case, I am supporting it because I believe it's necessary. Some of the things we need to take care of, considering our public safety building and other things, was crucial to be done. So I am going to support this. But for the record, those of you who know me, I know I don't like this. I think that, we can find other ways to generate tax income through stimulating the economy and bring in new tax funds. But in this case, it was the necessary thing to do. And if I recall right, Steve, you might be able to refresh my memory. Before we got to this point, we had a pretty much solid consensus on council that supported this, if I recall right, a majority of council. So you have folks in this council that, even though we're nonpartisan, we have various, political backgrounds, and the fact that we're all behind this, I think, tells us how much we really believe it needs to be done, and even it's a necessary thing that has to be done. But I'm glad that it's minimal as possible, and I'll be supporting it tonight based off of that rationale. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. One other point that I will go ahead and provide that is, in the last 7 years, we have raised that 11%, roughly 4.5%. It's been an increase over that time. And on the back of a napkin calculation is inflation has been roughly about 28%. We do try to run a very lean ship in Puyallup. And if those, again, who are watching, at times Barbara Lopez, our finance director, will give an explanation of how we go about budgeting. And it's an extremely conservative model of budgeting. And so that allows us to really, I think, be very efficient, which we are. But when we do make these 1% increases, I think they're very valid. All new hires that the city makes for employees come before this council. We have to approve those positions. So again, I think we have a lot of safeguards built in with that. Councilmember Whitting.
Yeah, I just wanted to focus on that levy rate for a moment. That was a 1.07% without the decimals.
Yes, 1.07.
Rate per thousand, correct?
Rate per thousand, correct.
So for a $500,000 home, as you said, it's $566. But I look at my property tax bill, and this just underlines the comments about the 11% coming to Puyallup. That's not a very robust number for Puyallup. How does that compare to our neighboring cities? Do you have any? My expectation would be that would be one of the lower property tax rates for a city.
The rate per thousand, very likely, but I don't have that information at my fingertips, so I would need to gather that for you.
Yeah, I'd appreciate having that. This is the first reading, right?
Correct.
So could you provide that next week for just a few of our neighboring cities so we have some context? Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add some situational awareness for the council and for those that are tuning in. As folks may be aware, the state of Washington is facing an $11 billion budget shortfall in the next biennium, 2025 to 2027. And there will be a lot of folks coming to the legislature asking for additional revenue, new revenue. There's going to be a lot of hard discussions and a lot of hard votes taken in Olympia in the year ahead. I share this because one of the things that we are likely to see in Olympia next year is a bill reintroduced, it'll be introduced, that increases the authority that municipalities have, city councils, to take more than a 1% property tax increase. I share that because, I think you'll see many cities that are in much dire positions than the city of Puyallup be very eager to take an increase. What that percentage is, I think, is up for discussion and remains to be seen. But, Puyallup continues to do a very good job, in my opinion, of being very thoughtful and conscious of the way that we spend dollars. And, I appreciate my colleagues up here willingness to entertain this. I know as a property owner who pays property tax, I know and have known for a long time that the city of Puyallup continues to do the right thing and has a lot of introspect before putting this before us and putting it before our residents. So thank you for your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. So we're going to take this in 2 bites. First bite, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve first reading of an ordinance, correct? That will determine fixing the amount of funds to be raised by the regular property taxes 2025. Hopefully I didn't mumble that through, but hopefully you understood that. So I'd like to entertain that. Do I have a member who'd like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now, second part. A motion to approve first reading of a resolution that will determine and fix the amount of funds to be raised by regular property taxes for 2025.
It's just to approve the resolution. That it's not a first reading because it's a resolution.
Okay, then I stand corrected that we're just going to make a motion to approve the resolution as such. Do I have a motion to do so?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. All those opposed? Okay, let's move on to the next item, 4C. First reading of an ordinance on the preliminary 2025-2026 biennial budget. In essence, this is where the money goes.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
Please go ahead.
All right. So tonight's action related with the budget itself is first reading of the ordinance to approve that 25-26 biennial budget. The citywide preliminary budget that came to you in October, we have budget discussions about it. The revenues totaled $312 million, and the expenses totaled $312.7 million. That 0.7 comes from money that we already have in the bank. We're not counting on new revenues to cover that. So the vast majority, we've got about 37% of our revenues citywide that come from taxes. We have about 40% that comes from charges for services. Think about your utility bills. So those services are in that category. And then the spending, we've got all of our internal service departments that provide services to our external facing departments, police, parks, public works, the court, the library, and those. So that's the spending that was actually in the preliminary budget. And then the staffing was, we started 2024, we have 330.35 FTE. We are reducing FTEs by 4.1 FTEs. This is part of the reductions that we did in order to help fund the public safety building. So our projected FTEs for this biennium are 326.25. So council, during deliberations, during budget study sessions, there were a few items that came up for consideration that council members initiated. These items are not included in the exhibits for first reading. So we're looking for feedback from you for direction for second reading tonight on these items, whether or not they should be included. They are not in the ordinance at this particular moment for first reading. The three items were the signal box art wraps. That's 3 signal boxes a year plus the PSE box over at the Splash Park for $28,700. The proposed funding for that is Tier 3. The banner poles along East and West Stewart, and then a couple of other intersections. That total is $104,400, proposed to come from the city's portion of the lodging tax. And then a cross-street lighting feature for 1 block along Meridian. The estimated cost of that is $650,000, and lodging tax, the city's portion of lodging tax, is the anticipated funding source for that. So that's the end of my presentation, but these are the items that we would like to know whether or not to include them for second reading.
Understand, and so that we know where the pot that each one of these comes from. What's the amount right now in Tier 3?
The Tier 3 amount is about $1.9 million.
Okay, and the LTAC portion that we have as the city, what is that at?
Is approximately $1.5 million.
And just remind us, that money has to be spent on tourism type activities.
Yes, the lodging tax does. It needs to be spent on anything tourism related. It could be marketing, it could be features, it could be, buildings, anything related with bringing tourism into Puyallup.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these council-initiated items, I think I support all of them. I think they'll have some merit there. And I do want to remind, Mayor, as you mentioned, that some might think, oh gosh, we're always spending on wraps and lighting and stuff like this. This is not coming out of our general budget. This was not money that was paid by constituents into the tax base that would be spent. This is monies that typically visitors who came to Puyallup to stay in our hotels pay a lodging tax that the city has now access to use and put back into the community to encourage more economic growth and stimulus. So just for folks to know, this is not coming out of our general budget, nor is it coming out of taxes that were paid by constituents, unless they happen to stay in a hotel and paid a portion of the motel tax. So I would support everything here. On the street lighting, I was the one that kind of supported that, and the reason being, I've seen certain cities that have done this, and it's really quite. It's got a nice ambiance, and I heard that Main Street recently, I think at a presentation, they're talking about putting some lights in one of the alleys down there. That really gives kind of a cool vibe to it, and these lights would be more the yellow ones, not the bright LED lights. So they're going to have that warmer kind of a tone. And staff specified to keep it within the full radius of the Pioneer Park. So it starts just about where roughly the attorney's building is, all the way down to Greek. And it would go across the street almost like a canopy of lights. So as you walk through or you drive through, you go under this kind of canopy of lights. And so it'll really make a great ambiance for those who are gathering in various downtown events, both in the early evening and the night. And so I'm excited to support this. And my suspect is this: once it's installed and done properly, I suspect that we may want to go north and head that direction, maybe south a little bit to tie into the fair. And so I think this will be a good pilot project to see how it looks and how people respond to it. And I believe we'll get a tremendous appeal to that, to our downtown core. So anyway, my recommendation, if we're seeking counsel, is I don't know if we need a motion, but I'd like to make a motion that we include these items in the second reading. Would that be appropriate, Mayor, to put that on the dais?
You can amend it first reading, or you can amend it second reading. There's no problem with that. Certainly, but I don't have a motion yet on the table for us to make that amendment. And if you'd like to make a motion to approve first reading of this, we'll go into the process of amending it.
Well, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve this first reading with an amendment that would add this on the second reading for consideration and final approval. That would be my motion.
Why don't we just do this? Let's put the motion on the table, and then you make the amendment, and then we can either vote for the amendment or not, and then we just keep moving through the process, and whatever we come out with today is first reading. And then second reading, you can amend it again if you would like at that time. It's kind of your second bite at the apple, so to speak. So I would say that's a more kind of a more logistical, sensical manner of going about this. So I would just entertain a motion to approve first reading of the ordinance, and we'll put it on the table for discussion and amendment.
Make a motion to approve first reading.
Okay, excellent. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's now been made. Now, Councilmember Johnson, would you like to make an amendment that would, in fact, and which of those three would you like to make an amendment?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment that all three of those items would be added to second reading, that we would take a look at for potential approval on second reading.
Okay. Councilmember Adler, you're up next, but we have an amendment before us right now. Would you like to speak on that amendment, or wait till we resolve this?
The amendment is on the table. I am happy to vote on the amendment.
Okay, excellent. Councilmember Whitting?
I have a couple questions that I might reflect on my vote on the amendment. So I would like to ask my questions first.
Okay, go ahead. Ask your question.
On the tier 3, what's the range we try to maintain? The percentage of budget range that we try to maintain there?
There isn't a percentage that we try to maintain in tier 3. There are general fund reserves that we want to maintain a percentage between 8 and 15%, but that's separate from tier 3.
Okay. And just with regard to the LTAC, we're proposing to spend about $750,000, and we've got a balance in there of $1.5 million, so that would take out half of that balance.
That is correct, but each year we add to it where the city initiated items are 55% of whatever the revenues are that come in. So it's not a one and done. It keeps getting added to every year.
Understood. Do you know how much we've spent of the LTAC funds this year so far?
Of the city initiated? I don't know that off the top of my head. I do know that the requests for this year weren't at the same level as we're asking for 2025. But I don't know what's been spent.
I believe it is somewhere around either 1.1 million or 1 million seems to be an amount.
I'm not sure. I would have to go look that up for what we got for 2024 awards last year. I'm not sure what that amount is.
Okay. Again, I'd like to have that information for the second reading.
Okay.
And I'd just like to make the comment that we've got a lot of needs in the city, and this seems like a pretty big chunk of change for some lighting, and quite frankly, I look out here at between us and the library's closed and City Hall's closed. It's after dark when the lights would be on. I would think that it may be more appropriate to go the way Councilmember Johnson suggested, and maybe if we wanted to put in this kind of lighting, put it up in our commercial district between here and headed north from here, as opposed to between here and the library where there isn't much going on. So that would be my comment on that. Thank you.
Just for clarification, that lighting, it did say downtown block, I believe. What was the?
It was the pricing is for one block downtown along Meridian. I believe that the picture that kind of came along with it showed it between City Hall and Pioneer Park, kind of in that area. But I'm sure that our Public Works Director, Ken Davies, could talk about the potential for having that in a different area.
That's fine. I mean, the proposal is what the proposal is. I just want to know what it is.
One block on Meridian downtown.
But only City Hall, not,
I'm going to let Mr. Davies speak to that.
okay.
Yeah, so it is one block City Hall from Elm basically down to just before 4th. 300,000 is our estimate. If we were to go farther, we could get economies of scale depending on where we're going, but each block would be about 300,000. So if you choose another block, it's 300,000.
The amount listed is 650,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at something else. 650, yeah, 575 to 650.
Okay, is that similar to the lighting you see here, or is it crisscross?
We just showed crisscross, but it can be parallel or perpendicular to the road. Really, it's up to your design choice.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Councilmember Johnson, you are the maker of this motion. Go ahead and speak. I have you there.
I just wanted to clarify. So, because I mentioned Tier 3 came up, and I just want to clarify and educate me if I'm mistaking it. These fundings for these projects, is LTAC considered part of Tier 3?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It's separate funding.
So are we proposing Tier 3 money for any of these? Or are these all LTAC?
The only thing that we're proposing Tier 3 for are the signal box wraps, because
Signal
those
box,
aren't
okay.
necessarily related to tourism.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I was getting confused if somehow we're using Tier 3 for all of it, but just only for the signal box wraps. The other two is coming from LTAC, which is designated not out of the general fund and strictly for tourism-related activities. I agree with you. That's why I wanted to clarify this. It does seem, and Councilor Whitting, I do agree with you. I think it does seem a little bit odd in tough times to be utilizing this, but we can't use it for any kind of general funds. We can't use it for our budget. So I get it. So if we can make the downtown core a little happier, a little better, that's good for morale, and certainly we can use it during tough times. So if this was monies that came out of tax fund constituent tax base, I would absolutely say no. So I would agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler, I apologize. I thought your name was up and you had not taken it down. I didn't know that you actually had put it back up. So I'd like to skip over Deputy Mayor King, if he doesn't mind, and go to you again. Apologies for that.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is probably a question for Mr. Davies related to the signal box wraps and in particular PSE, the PSE box. I am the problem child who put that forward or asked the question. It kind of took off without me knowing. That's okay. So I actually was pleasantly surprised the other day. I'm a very observant person, and so I was pleasantly surprised the other day when I was walking through the park here, and I noticed that one of the signal boxes must have been very recently wrapped inside of the spray park. Because I had never noticed that before. And so that's great. My question is, the PSE box notwithstanding, because there's two more boxes that are in that park right now that are just green. So the PSE box notwithstanding, would then that third box also be wrapped, or does this proposal just include that one PSE box in addition to regular signal boxes around the city that have been identified as part of our process through the Arts Commission, et cetera?
So currently, yes, we're only doing the PSE box, and I think that it's when I remember the look, it's one large box, and it does have an auxiliary box with it, and both will be wrapped.
Okay.
The other box, I'm not too familiar with it. I'd have to talk to our parks director, but I believe it might be city-owned. We'd have to check into that. But as far as the additional wraps, we can include those types of boxes if it is a city-owned box, but right now we're only concentrating on signal cabinet boxes in their auxiliary electrical service cabinets.
Understood. It's great to have. I would like to see as many boxes as possible within our parks and other public spaces wrapped. I recognize that there's an extended cost or an increased cost rather, with doing the PSE boxes. So I'm supportive of this and the proposals before us. either way, however it plays out, whether the PSE box is included or not. I just hope that moving forward we can expand and think about wrapping boxes within our parks and other public spaces. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Ken, stay there, because Deputy Mayor, you're up next.
Regarding the lighting of Meridian, the crisscross lighting, is this lighting the same type of lighting that we have seen in the park that's currently there, that's strung across hundreds of feet?
So it's a little bit different in that it is road grade lighting. It has that filter, so there's many different selections of lighting that can be a palette before you.
Yeah.
But the when we go to design, the intent is to be above a roadway, and so then we will, make sure that it would have the correct illumination and it doesn't cause a distraction like flickering or any of that. So it's not an inexpensive lighting necessarily like you would, not saying that Costco is inexpensive, but it's a different type of lighting that's just meant to be above a roadway.
Is that necessary?
Just from safety basically is the concern when you're driving down the road. So it's the same as the streetway lighting that we use. We just meet a standard.
But is it required?
There is, I guess, an industry-wide standard. I would have to look into what the requirement is.
I'm just looking at it from a law perspective, if it's required for us to spend
I think that if we went
$350,000 on a block of lighting.
Yeah.
Or 600?
600.
600 and
Right.
650. Is that what it's?
Yeah, in 650, that includes retroing it into, an existing, where we already have concrete down, so, we'll have to do some restoration, some demo, put in the poles, the strain poles that they pull the guide wire from. If we were doing it in the Meeker Festival Street, the cost would be a little bit less expensive, just because we would get, it's like economies of scale. It'd already be tore up. We'd be doing the conduit for electricity, that type of thing.
I like the idea. I just don't like the 650,000. The city lighting that we did, as you know, cost about 100,000 to do all of this. And I'm just looking at it from, yes, it's play money, if you will, but I just don't know if it's responsible to pay 650,000 to do one block of lighting. I do like the idea. I do like the classiness of it. I just don't know if that right now, for that much, and you can ask my wife, I have no problem spending money. I don't know if I could do that. But that said, I really like the idea. I just don't know if it's right now is the right time for that. I would like to see 650,000 be used to finish the rest of the lightscape that we've already started throughout the rest of our downtown, and not to take away from what that is, but that's going to be, you could do the rest of downtown for 150,000, 200,000 maybe. I'm just having a hard time swallowing 650,000 to do a block, respectfully, for some basic lights that you could pick up at McClendon's for a few $100, in all due respect. I do love the idea. I don't know if I can get behind the $500,000 price tag to do a block. I just don't know. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
I'll just speak to that. I think there's some missing pieces here. It's not just the lights going up. We're talking about a professional, systematic, with new metal poles going up on both sides of the street. It's not just like you're stringing them from point to point. It would be very systematic and very balanced and very professional, not just stringing lights across like we did at the park.
Yeah, correct. We really gave you the worst case scenario. We didn't want to come under budget. So this includes controls. So it's remote control from, possibly City Hall. It's anticipating possibly not having all the conduit that we need underground to get from City Hall electrical, the circuit back to City Hall, or a signal if we have to put in a service cabinet. All that's included. So some of those costs when we go to design might not be there. So this is just the worst case scenario cost.
Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor King.
If at all possible, I would just like to, worth consideration of exploring this a little deeper before we move on, just to make sure that we are spending our play money with all due respect to the funds of where it's coming from. Just making sure that we're doing the right thing with it. The price tag scares me a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, I think Councilmember Whitting.
I just want to say I second what Councilmember King has been saying. Thank you.
Okay, I will remind everyone this is first reading. This is, we passed this evening, and with amended or not, and it goes forward, and we have how long to work on amendments till we come back for a final reading? Barbara?
Second reading is scheduled for next week, but it could be, for the budget, it could be pushed to December 10th. Is that the December meeting? We have to have an adopted budget by the end of the year.
I understand that. I hope that we can resolve this issue by that time, whether we come up with an alternative. But having said that, we have the amendment before us, and let's vote on that. All those in favor of the amendment proposed by Councilmember Johnson? We're in the process of voting.
Well, I was just going to mention, I don't want to interrupt, but I'm listening to comments of my colleagues here, and if there's some concern, I'll pull my amendment. I mean, I don't have to have it on. This is not something I need to die on this hill, simply putting it out there, but if I can pull it if you want. I'm not opposed to it. So
we have the referee, Joe Beck, has intervened, our city attorney, and I believe he will say that the voting has started. But anyway.
No, I'm going to say that we did not hear a second on this.
No,
motion.
there was a second. There was a motion was made by Councilmember Gilliam, and I believe
on the amendment.
Yes.
This was our. I'm sorry, I don't mean to argue.
Oh, no, you're right.
Councilmember Johnson made the motion, and we went right into discussion.
Okay, well then, do I feel kind of silly then?
Which is why I was going to abort if there wasn't a second. I don't want to jam this through. This is not my intent. I still believe we should go forward with it, but if there's some concern, I don't want to make it an issue, so I'm willing to retract that.
Well, I get the honor of saying you're out of order because there's no motion on the floor. Because it doesn't have a second.
Well, you didn't call for a second.
No. Okay, is there a second? Okay, thank you, Councilmember Johnson. With that, we're going to move on now. The motion we have before us is first reading of the underlying bill unamended. Okay? Now, is there discussion to that? And by the way, I would say, just let me add this, Councilmember Johnson, we have this interim time to work this out. Okay, let's do some research.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. All those in favor of the first reading indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, those opposed say nay. Okay, with that, we're now going to move on. Thank you, Barbara, for that exercise. It was good to hear everybody's thoughts on this issue. Hopefully, we will move forward with something on second reading that will satisfy everyone. With that, we have a resolution, and that is approving a special valuation request. I think we heard someone testify regarding this under public comments, but it's historic preservation for the Harris Building located at 1102 East Main. We have, could you, is it Nabila?
Nabila, correct. Yes.
Nabila Comstock, please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name is Nabila. I am a planner with Development and Permitting Services. Tonight, I will be presenting City Council with the Design Review and Historic Preservation Board's decision for preliminary approval of special valuation for the Harris Building so that they may execute an agreement by resolution between the city and the owner for special valuation. The owner of the Harris Building and the applicant for special tax valuation is Mr. John Hopkins. The Harris Building is located at 1102 East Main, was built in 1949, and was listed on the Puyallup Register of Historic Places in 2022. In 2023, the Design Review and Historic Preservation Board approved a certificate of appropriateness for proposed rehabilitation and renovation to the historically listed structure. A certificate of appropriateness is required for changes to historically listed buildings. Following the completed rehabilitation of the Harris Building, Mr. Hopkins is now requesting to receive special tax valuation status. Special valuation is the revision of the assessed value of a historic property for a period of 10 years. It is a value for property tax purposes, which is calculated by subtracting the qualified rehabilitation expenditures from the total assessed value of the property. Property tax may change from year to year because of changes in the assessed value, but qualified rehabilitation expenditures would continue to be deducted from the new assessment for the full 10-year period of the special valuation. For this application, if approved, the special valuation would be reflected in the 2025 value of the property. The tax reduction would affect tax statements from 2026 to 2035, and then the full rate of taxes on full market value of the property would begin again in 2036. Special valuation is an incentive for owners of historically listed properties and is codified in the Puyallup Municipal Code in Chapter 21. In order to apply for special valuation, the applicant must meet the criteria set forth in the Washington Administrative Code, which are that the property is included in a class of historic properties eligible for special valuation, has been rehabilitated at a cost of at least 25% of the assessed value of historic property exclusive of the land prior to rehabilitation, has been rehabilitated within 24 months prior to the date of application, and has not been altered in any way which adversely affects elements which qualify it as historically significant. So for special valuation benefits, special valuation provides multiple benefits to the owner, the historic structure, and the community. Special valuation provides the owner the opportunity to rehabilitate and restore their historic buildings without being subject to increased property taxes once improvements are made, and it aids in promoting the investment into rehabilitation of eligible historic properties. As for community benefit, by providing this incentive for owners of historic structures, the community can see the benefit of financial investments into historic buildings and as they are required to be maintained in good condition. The community will not see changes to historically listed structures that alter their historically qualifying elements, as alterations are subject to review before changes are made to the historic structure. And lastly, as part of the incentive requirements, the property must be visible from the public right-of-way or otherwise be made visible or made available for public view once a year. So for fiscal impacts, one moment. The tax adjustment determined each year by Pierce County is based on the approved qualified rehabilitation expenditures. Mr. Hopkins spent $762,338 in qualified rehabilitation expenditures. Therefore, this amount would be reduced from the assessed market value of his property each year. He will then owe taxes based on the difference in rehabilitation costs in the total assessed value for his property. Due to the nature of the incentive being a special tax valuation, there are fiscal impacts over the 10-year period. The potential city taxes that could be lost over the 10-year period are approximately $6,047. This approximate is based off if the qualifying rehabilitation cost exceeds the market value of the property each year throughout the 10 years and the current tax rate. However, the market value of the property can continue to go up and down each year. And speaking with the county, the market total value for 2026 for the property, which is the first year that the tax reduction would begin, has not been determined yet. If rehabilitation costs exceed the market value, then the property owner would only be required to pay fees such as weed control, fire benefit in the Pierce Conservation District. If the rehabilitation costs are below the market value, then the property owner would pay taxes based on the difference, and they would be required to pay all levies just at a reduced value. As for the process, as part of the review for special valuation, the Design Review and Historic Preservation Board was responsible to review the application and determine if the application was complete and met the criteria set forth in the WAC for special valuation for historic properties. Ultimately, the board found that the property met all the eligibility requirements and criteria for special valuation, as it is a historic property having been listed on the Puyallup Register of Historic Places in 2022, is within a historic property eligible, is within a class of historic properties eligible for special valuation, again, having been listed on the Historic Register in 2022, and having received a certificate of appropriateness to complete the rehabilitation work in 2023. The building was rehabilitated at a cost of at least 25% of the assessed valuation of the historic property, as was certified by the county, as well as notarized attesting to the cost of rehabilitation. And it was not altered in a way that adversely affected its qualifying elements, as it was approved via certificate of appropriateness by the board in 2023. Following the board's approval of the application for special valuation for the Harris Building at their October 3rd meeting, they are now transmitting their decision to City Council, who may authorize the city manager to execute the special valuation agreement between the city and the owner through the city attorney. Following the resolution to execute the agreement, the board would certify their decision in writing and file a copy of the agreement with the Pierce County Assessor. The property would then be monitored for 10 years, the length of the special tax valuation. So tonight, for council action, this evening, City Council may authorize by resolution the city manager to execute a historic preservation special valuation agreement between the city and the owner. The execution of an agreement between the city and the owner would constitute board final approval of the application for special valuation. If the resolution is denied, the applicant may appeal the decision to Superior Court. Thank you. That's all for my presentation tonight.
Okay. Council members, do you have any questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Okay, with that, we're now going to recess and we're going to go into a Transportation Benefit District meeting. We, prior to this meeting, established a Transportation Benefit District, and that Transportation Benefit District has governing members, and they just happen to be the City Council. And we will now convene into a separate meeting for that to determine what type of a tax we will utilize within this district. So with that, I'm going to recess a regular City Council meeting, and with that, I'm now going to convene a Transportation Benefit District meeting. And with that, we have a resolution before us, Resolution 6A, and this, please come forward, Tilika Makaharia, and introduce the resolution.
Good evening, Chair Castema and members of the Transportation Benefit District Governing Board. Tulika Makaharia, Performance Management Analyst, and first presenter at your very first TBD board meeting.
Hey.
So also Finance Director Lopez is here in case of any questions. As a background, little refresher to the resolution, I have a couple of slides for you. So starting with a quick recap of the TBD process and how we got here, you'll recall that in early September, we had a informational presentation, followed by a presentation and council's discussion at the first budget study session. Then at the October 29th meeting, as council members, you conducted a public hearing and for the formation of a TBD and first reading of the ordinance. And then last week at the November 12th meeting, there was second reading of the ordinance, and you established the Puyallup Transportation Benefit District with all of you as its governing board members. So that brings us to today, and we have a resolution in front of you to fund the district that you created with 1/10 of 1% sales and use tax. So the 0.1% tax translates to $1 on a $1,000 purchase, and it will be in effect for 10 years. It is projected that this will raise an annual estimated revenue of $3 million, and that entire amount, 100% of that, will stay in Puyallup. The revenue generated from the tax can be used only for transportation-related improvements in the city, and that could be construction of capital projects, operations, maintenance. So for transportation improvements in Puyallup, this creates a designated, sustainable source of funding, and it reduces reliance on the general fund. With this measure, the city will be able to balance its 2025-2026 budget, so those dollars in the general fund that are currently used to cover some part of the streets costs will be freed up, and they can be directed to other core services. So that is all the presentation I have, but Finance Director and I are here in case of questions.
Okay, are there questions? We had discussed this, I believe, when we were talking about the formation of the Transportation Benefit District, a lot of these details. Again, we are the board for the Transportation Benefit District, and we have to make the decision on that level of taxation, and that's what this is. So with that, I would entertain a motion, if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution that in fact would fund this district.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. At this point, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, and there is no second reading on that?
No, it's a resolution, yeah.
Okay, now I'm now going to adjourn the first meeting, so we can all say we were here at the first meeting. And anyone in the audience, I have to tell you, you can say you were there when. Okay, we're going to adjourn the Transportation Benefit District, and we're now going to resume the City Council meeting.
Thank you,
Councilman.
You're
very welcome, and thank you for all your hard work from the very beginning. You could say, you were there at the birth of this. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Let's move on to number 7, consideration of requests. 7A, approval of construction bid pertaining to the Teen Center in the Puyallup Public Library. City Engineer Hans Hunger, if you could come forward. Oh, would you like to come forward instead? I think
Hans is coming as
Hans comes very slowly.
We'll allow you to team up on this. Hi there.
Hi there.
Please proceed.
Okay. It's nice to see you guys. Just wanted to recap a bit on where we've been and where we're going with the teen zone. So we have identified a purpose that we needed a teen zone to accommodate the teens in the community. So we're trying to create a welcoming, safe, and dedicated space to match our growing needs. And as you can see here in the picture, this is our current teen zone, and it really accommodates maybe about 10 people. And so it's really insufficient for the dozens and dozens of people that we see daily coming into the library. Did I introduce myself? I'm Nicole Erickson. Sorry. I just jumped right in.
And you're with the library.
The library.
Okay,
I am.
good.
I am. So sorry. So here we have, in expanding the space, this space here that we have already opened up and we're ready for construction is the future space of the teen study area. So there will be, I have another picture a little bit later, but we're going to have booths there and then a little study space for the teens to use over on the right near the history room, if you're familiar with the upstairs area. And again, this is our current teen zone, and that's going to be turned into the teen lounge area of the Rotary Teen Zone. Where we started, just a quick recap, we started last November working with Johnson Architects, and so if this slide looks slightly familiar, this was part of their presentation. They reached out to the teens and got some feedback about what was needed in the design and how that space would be used. And they also asked staff what we would be looking for, which was an expansion of the space as well as some acoustic separation. So they came up with some designs. So this would be the flex space, which is located right where the teen zone currently is. We would just move the collection out and turn that into a flexible lounge space. And as I mentioned here, this is another view of the study area with the little study room there on the right. In the spring, we went out to bid, and the bids came in very high. We had only 2 bids, and they were both very not really feasible. They were far above what we expected, the estimate. So we had a new strategy. We made some alterations to the plans. We had some additional walkthroughs, some more opportunities for people to come and inspect the job. And we timed it where, because of we're not competing with summer projects, this is an indoor project and we're going into terrible weather starting today. And so we actually did have some really competitive offers this time. So did you want to take it from here, Hans? All right.
Hello, Hans Hunger, city engineer. So my group is helping to manage the project. Ryan Ratowski is our project manager for this. So as you can see, we have an engineer's estimate of $359,000, and when previously bidded in May, only 2 bidders. And as anybody trying to implement a project knows, the more competition you can get, sometimes if you can time it right, where people are hungrier, they don't have as many things already on their books lined up and stuff, they get more competitive on their bids. And so the strategy of going out and bidding it again reduced down that price, with the low price being down around $340. So we're saving over $200,000 from the previous bid to this. Now there was some changes in the design there to try to facilitate that, but very good bids we feel like in this time. So you add sales tax to that, and then we're also asking for what we traditionally do for all our construction contracts is put a 10% contingency on the requested funds. That allows us to make change orders as they come up without having to come back to council to reauthorize that additional money. So in the total, this would be for $508,201. And the funding sources here are Tier 3 money. The Rotary Club of Puyallup has donated $100,000 towards this project, and the Library Foundation has donated $10,000. And so the next steps for this, if the council accepts the low bid, it takes us usually about 4 to 6 weeks to execute a contract, getting all the paperwork, making sure licenses and bonds are all in place for this. Then we'll hold a pre-construction meeting, which will establish the notice to proceed date. And then the contractor has, according to the contract, 85 working days to complete the contract. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Gilliam.
I guess this isn't a question, but more of a thank you for all your hard work and time invested into this project. Being closely connected to the Puyallup Rotary Club, this is near and dear to our hearts, and I believe it's also near and dear to the citizens of Puyallup. So just really grateful for all your hard work and excited to see this move forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, you're looking for a motion on this?
I certainly am.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal as indicated by staff.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. It's now before us for discussion. Let me just comment and say that very pleased with how this has progressed. I really think the council members need to be commended because it takes a lot of discipline to accumulate funds in Tier 3. I can tell you that I've seen tremendous restraint in my 7 years of watching other council members think about putting projects forward but restraining themselves, knowing that the carry forward costs on those, for example, may obligate the city to future funds that would negate our ability to do things like we are doing this evening. It's that fiscal discipline that I think allows the city of Puyallup to have great projects like this come forward and us be able to afford them, even when times are a little lean, and even when other cities are going through tremendous pains. We are able to fund our teen center, and our teens are going to be much better for it. Community will be much better for it, but it all starts with, I think, some discipline on the council to really prioritize what is important. So as I appreciated all those comments this evening about, the projects we would fund, et cetera, lighting, it just shows the level of intensity we bring to this conversation. And with that, I'll bring this to a close and a vote. Thank you both for being here. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, that passes. So, yeah, you can high-five yourself. That was excellent. Okay. Now
Thank you
we're
so
going to
much.
move. You're very welcome. And thank you for your hard work and the hard work of the other librarians. With that, city manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick update on the weather event. We do, council, stand ready this evening if the winds do pick up. Parks Department, Public Works, Police Department, Emergency Management is ready to respond. The most recent weather reports show that we will not get the brunt of this, much like some of the areas to our west and up north. But if we do, we are prepared to respond accordingly. Just a kind of an interesting note on the teen zone. Back in early 2023, the engineer, and I want to give some credit to our engineering department, their estimate for this was $383,000. This came in at $375,000. So that was over a year and a half ago that the team estimated what it would cost to build, and was right on. So good job to our Hans Hunger and our engineering department for that. And thank you to council for approving that, and thank you to the Puyallup Rotary Club and the Library Foundation for being a part of that. Your next meeting is next Tuesday, and at that meeting there will be a proclamation declaring Small Business Saturday, which is Saturday after Thanksgiving. There will be a presentation by Pierce Transit staff on their Destination 2045 long-range plan. And then there will be second readings of the budget ordinances, both the property tax and the budget. And then there will also be a update on your city strategic plan and an update on the city's legislative policy and capital budget requests. We bring that back to you again. And most importantly, you will be deciding on how many meetings and when you'll have meetings next year. Your city council meeting calendar will be coming before you. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager Steve Kirkley. Let's move on to council reports. Councilmember Whitting.
I'm going to pass tonight.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
I'm going to pass.
Okay, Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. No report. I just want to say again how proud I am of the Puyallup Library, the City of Puyallup, for putting the Teen Zone bids together when working on behalf with the Puyallup Rotary and Library Foundation Board. I'm also really honored to get to work with such amazing colleagues, hearing our conversation tonight about wanting to bring warmth downtown, but also not breaking the bank and being conscious about the price tag. I just am so proud of our team up here, and I feel honored to get to be on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilliam. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. So I just wanted to highlight again, thanking the VFW and other organizations for the Veterans Day program on November 10th, the Sunday before the Veterans Day holiday on Monday. Appreciated your remarks, Mr. Mayor. Was great to be joined by colleagues as well. And then, of course, we had our dedication here in the lobby, and was very moved by that, and so grateful for the Candle family and the sacrifice made. Very sobering, but also I felt, very humbled to be standing there alongside our fellow neighbors and the Candle family. On Saturday, this past Saturday, appreciated the opportunity to attend the Arts Downtown annual dinner and fundraiser alongside the mayor and deputy mayor. It was a great evening. It's great to see former Mayor Turner as well as former council member Martineau very much engaged in that organization. So powerful, such a powerful organization, and the collections that we have here in the city that we get to appreciate day in and day out, that is available to the public, is really something that so many other cities desire, and we are just so lucky to have such a strong organization to ensure that art is accessible here in our community. And then finally, I just want to say that earlier today I had the opportunity to pop into Holiday Cafe, which is our new coffee shop right here in the downtown, and it was packed. So exciting to see the growth that continues to happen in downtown Puyallup. And boy, are our new businesses just, rocking and rolling. And I'm always just so blown away, but angry that I can't even get in the door to some of these places like Cat and Rabbit, where literally every time I show up, they're already sold out of the cake. So welcome Holiday Cafe, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo a lot of what Councilmember Adler mentioned about the wonderful events that we had over the last week or so, the Veterans Day event, meeting with the Candle family up here for commemorating just outside the council chambers here, along with the Arts Downtown event. That was really special. That was a great event. And just all the things that we have going on in downtown. I think we sometimes take our downtown for granted, and we really, really do have a special city. And I'm thankful for having such great colleagues to work alongside with, great staff in our city, from top to bottom. You guys do a great job, so I appreciate each and every one of you. And I will refrain from doing my best Buddy the Elf impersonation to tell you that Santa is coming to town December 7th. So with that said, support Small Business Saturday. I know him too. And looking forward to that and seeing everyone out there on the streets December 7th for the Santa Parade. And again, don't forget to support Small Business Saturday. It's coming up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor King. Appreciate that. I will be brief this evening. I do appreciate those comments that everyone has made, and you're right. The Santa Day Parade is just wonderful in Puyallup. I think there's nothing else like it if you have seen it. I don't know how many. I think they maybe have 110, 120 different groups go through in the Santa Parade. It's really very extensive, and you have marching bands from different groups, You've got, even companies decorate their vehicles and go through. It's really a very, very fun, festive time, and it all ends up right here at the pavilion. And this year, we're going to have the Puyallup High School Choir come out, and they're going to sing some holiday songs, which they haven't done, at least in my years here. I haven't seen them do it. So it's going to have kind of an angelic feel to it. I think it'll be very, very, very wonderful. So we have a lot of festive things coming up in the holidays. I look forward to, we have 2 more meetings before we adjourn for the Christmas holidays. And we plan on next week, a week from now, tackling our budget, making the final vote on that. We've made some very key votes on that this evening. I tell my colleagues all the time, the most important vote that we make up here is the budget. That's where all that we interlace into that budget are our priorities here in Puyallup, and it's delivering all the services, our police services, our parks, roads, all of these things that we do at that time manifest themselves in that budget. So it's a very, very important vote for us to make, and I appreciate the discussion we had this evening, although, questionable order, whatever. The point was, it was a good discussion because I hope between now and then we can work out some of those details so we get the end that we want. Maybe the means getting there is going to be a little bit different than that what was prescribed, but it gives us time to make those decisions and bring them forward. So with that, I wish everyone a good week. We'll come back, and again, 2 more meetings before we delve right into Christmas, but we do have Thanksgiving coming up, so we're in the holiday season. With that, we do not have any executive session this evening, so we're going to adjourn. Thank you all.